Welcome to Opera San José Talks. On February 10, we will open Richard Wagner's The Flying Dutchman. And joining me today are Gustav Andreassen, who is singing Daland, and Derek Taylor, who is singing Erik. Both of you are making your Opera San José debuts with this production, and our public is not familiar with you, I'm afraid. So let's begin with some background questions. Derek, where are you from, and where is your current home?
I was born in Los Angeles.
L.A.
Los Angeles, California boy, and I now, as of a few months ago, live in Milwaukee. Very cold Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's chilly up there.
Just north of Chicago.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's chilly.
But it makes a difference. It's cold.
Yeah.
It is. And Gustav.
I'm from Oak Grove, Oregon, which is southeast of Portland. Originally, I live in the northern Kentucky area now. I went to the CCM, Cincinnati Conservatory of Music, and bought a house across the river. Yeah.
It's very pretty up there.
Rolling Hills, yeah. I think it's more beautiful in Portland, but yeah, it's...
Well, Portland is one of the prettiest towns I've ever been in.
Yeah. They looked up at all the mistakes that bigger towns made and made sure that they didn't make those mistakes. Yeah.
It's a lovely place.
Yeah.
It doesn't expand much, right? From what I
What do you mean?
read, Portland.
Oh,
I feel like there's zoning laws to protect
there's a land use
how quaint
planning.
it is. Yeah.
Like when I grew up, we could walk to a pumpkin patch. You could walk and cut down a Christmas tree because there had to be so much farmland. Sadly enough, that's not quite the you could pick your own blueberries and strawberries and stuff like that, but that's not quite the case any longer. A lot of those old farms are now, they've changed the land use planning to farther away from the city because of zoning laws and stuff like that. So those have changed a bit, but c'est la vie.
I grew up way in the countryside. Nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing for miles. But
Where are you from?
Central Florida, between
Florida,
Tampa and Sarasota,
Oh, okay, yeah.
on a fabulously beautiful river.
I've sung at both those places, but I don't think I've been in between them.
There's nothing between them.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's nothing there. But that was good for me because I grew up canoeing and swimming and
right.
with my cousins and
Yeah.
it was good, and it causes you to be self-reliant because you don't have anybody.
Right.
You don't see anybody.
Right.
So I was able to read.
I did not have that problem in Los Angeles.
No, in LA, there's plenty of folks around.
I was
Plenty of
never
folks.
felt lonely.
You don't have to play by yourself. I almost said the wrong thing. By yourself.
Yeah.
So, Gustav, I know that you have performed Daland in the past. Talk about that.
Well, it's interesting. I played him differently. On one director wanted me to do it fairly serious role. It's just no comic moments at all. I think this one we have a few comic relief moments, which is nice about that. It's funny because I feel like everybody else is singing Wagner and I'm singing like Bellini. Because it's like Wagner sings all these diminished chords, the bum 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 bum, and I'm singing a dum da dum da dum da dum da da ya da 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 ha da da da.
Not quite,
it's not as fun. Actually, I just sang one of the lines right before I sing, but so that's.
There are moments. I mean, he was only 29, right?
Is that all?
So there are moments in Dutchman when you just go, whose music is this?
Oh, I know. It's amazing. Especially
Yeah.
just how it starts with it sounds like you're at sea. I mean, he's only been at sea like a few times in his life. Yeah.
The opening, the overture for this opera.
Amazing. The first time I heard that, I was just blown away with the sounds.
And it's so unrelenting.
Yeah.
Jeez, that's exciting. Today is the first orchestra rehearsal. Yesterday they had the first chair strings, and today they have the whole orchestra. And of course, I couldn't go into the first chair strings because they were in the music director's studio, and I would have been obvious. But I can hear it from my desk, right? But this morning I go hide behind a flat in the big rehearsal hall to listen to everything, and it's exciting music.
It is. I mean, and I think it's so accessible, Wagner, because I think there's this stigma that it's very heavy and very German, and I mean, it does get very complicated the later he's composed. Like we were just talking about Parsifal, and obviously that's a very complicated sound and score, but I feel like the overture of this, it could be some John Williams score out of some action movie.
Well,
it's so accessible. It's it has such great melodies, this opera.
The film score writers from Steiner, Gone with the Wind, right? I used to date his niece or something.
Oh, okay.
He said that he went straight to Wagner to
I
figure
know
out how to write
Yeah,
film scores.
I believe
Yeah.
it.
The idea of the leitmotif,
that's
exactly, and
John
that
Williams.
takes you through.
Yeah,
Well,
through
over
it,
beers
yeah.
the other night, we were saying that just the end of E.T. there are moments that sound like Wotan's farewell, and I'm sure it's not an accident.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he was a huge fan of Wagner, John
Right,
Williams,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it sounds like
He's
it.
even talked about writing an opera, but I don't know if he ever will. But that would be really kind of cool if he did.
So, Erik, Derek, who sings Erik.
Derek the Erik.
Yes.
We call him.
Derek the Erik. Talk to us about this guy.
Well, I think as a character, we see him very distraught very often. I almost think it's not as important as where he's come from. He's this local hunter. He has a relationship, or he had a relationship with Senta.
He was hoping for a relationship.
He was
with Senta.
hoping, and I think her being young, I think she might have promised him some things, maybe to keep him quiet. But they definitely have a long relationship as friends.
A friendship from
Whether
childhood,
how much
clearly.
of it is a courtship and how much of it was an actual relationship, it's unclear. But I think his relationship, what's important about it is that I think he is the one drawing her back to reality until Dutchman actually shows up. But he's heartbroken, he's in love with her, and he spends basically the entire time on stage trying to convince her to stay with him or be with him.
And he's terrified of the Dutchman.
Terrified,
Yeah.
right.
Everybody's scared of the Dutchman, except Daland.
No, yeah, Daland. I guess he sees the good in people's hearts. You know?
Blinded by the glint of gold.
He has the money, yes.
yeah, that doesn't hurt.
Well, I, as you were saying, accessible. This to me is the most accessible of all the Wagner operas. It's just the easiest to walk into.
It's the shortest too, right? I think it's the shortest.
I think it's shorter than Rheingold. Yeah,
Oh
Rheingold,
yeah,
I think
it's
it's
definitely
yeah.
shorter than Rheingold.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Even the
the
obscure ones like
surprised.
Delphine, all that, I think those are all longer. I think
Yeah.
Rienzi's longer. I think it's all
Rienzi's
longer.
a huge opera.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
modeled after Meyerbeer,
Oh, okay.
and Delphine was modeled after Karl Maria von Weber.
Okay.
And Das Liebesverbot, which we know nothing about, although somebody recently did it. I think Glimmerglass did Das
Sounds like
Liebesverbot.
something they do. Yeah.
Okay.
That was modeled on Donizetti.
Oh, really?
Get outta here.
Wow.
So the first three operas were, he wasn't trying to be original. He was modeling his work on somebody else. And with Dutchman, which was a long time incubating, with Dutchman, he finally stepped forward with his own voice, and even the theme that's going to haunt him right through until Parsifal. Parsifal does a flip side to that theme. But the idea that man is condemned through their own acts, and it takes a woman to save them, to redeem them from condemnation. And we're talking like condemnation forever. Lohengrin doesn't work that way, though.
Right. I was gonna. Yeah.
But and Parsifal flips it. The guy saves the woman. Parsifal saves Kundry, and she ends up being in the monastery scrubbing the floors. And her only words in the whole of the third act are dienen, dienen, serve, serve. What are you doing here? Serving, serving. So it is through service to the community. It's weird to look at this, his development over time of what he thought romance was all about. At the beginning, it was only sexual. That was the whole point. Right up to Tristan and Isolde. And then with Tristan, it was, no, this is a love that will never be consummated through a sex act. It's going to be consummated in death. And then in Parsifal, the whole point is to avoid sexual consummation, to refuse that, to overcome that desire, and serve your community. And in that way, you find your salvation. So he has a long ride to get where he's going. He's nearly 70, just 3 months shy of 70 when he dies. So he has a long ride. And we know that he finished Parsifal just shortly before. So it's toward the end of a long life, a long, horrible life. I mean, he lived most of the time homeless and penniless until he sort of let the King of Bavaria, the 18-year-old handsome Ludwig, think that he would be his lover, and therefore was able to get money out of Ludwig of Bavaria. But he was not his lover.
Right.
And the problem arose when he became another woman's lover who was married, and it became high aristocrats, scandalous,
Right.
and he had to leave. So, and that tore it didn't entirely tear it. Ludwig still sent him a little bit of money for Bayreuth, but not much. Saw to it they didn't starve, but not much.
I do have to say, though, living in Europe was advantageous to visit some of the places that he was exiled to. His house in in Lausanne, was pretty spectacular. It's right on the Zurich See, and it is gorgeous.
These people put him up and took care of him, and then he took their wives to bed.
Yeah. I mean, that's where he wrote. That's where it all happened, there in Lausanne. And then I also got to visit King Ludwig's. The name is escaping me. What's that castle called?
Neuschwanstein?
The
famous fairy tale castle.
Yeah.
A tribute
castle
to Wagner, really.
Yeah. So, and that was also, spectacular.
And Wagner never got to see it.
Yeah, it is spectacular. Wait, no, but he did stay there. Wait.
Wagner, no. There's another one. I can't remember the name of it.
There's two castles there.
Was brought up.
There's Neuschwanstein, and then across there's a smaller castle, and I believe he did stay there because
he may have stayed at the smaller castle.
Yeah, he stayed at the smaller one. Stayed at the smaller one, but it was still pretty spectacular.
Well, yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's the one with the famous Venus Grotto.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see, some of these places that he had written and lived. You feel somewhat more connected to a piece when you've actually, especially as an American, because 9 out of 10 times we're not really singing American composers' songs. So living in Europe, the composers become a little bit more mortal. They become more human, like they lived here. There's something tangible about that rather than this abstract composer that lived a while ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Have you seen the Stephen Fry special?
Yes,
about Wagner?
I love it. It was great.
I haven't. No.
I recommend you see that stuff. It's amazing.
He's a huge Wagner fan.
Oh, to the
Stephen
point
Fry.
that he nearly weeps just to open the door of Bayreuth to walk into the theater. Was
that Wagner and Me? No,
there's another one.
There was a documentary, Wagner and Me.
This was a BBC documentary. I think it was 2 parts, or it might have just been 1 part.
I think it's one.
Is it just one
long sitting? Because I've watched it.
Oh, okay.
And it may have been 2 parts combined, and I didn't notice.
Okay.
Because I watched it on YouTube, and they feed through. But there's another one about Wagner, and there's sort of a contest about Wagner and Verdi or something. But this is it may be called Wagner and Me, and it takes you right through. And he, Stephen Fry is Jewish, and I think his grandparents were killed in Auschwitz, and so for him to have these deep feelings for Wagner, and they are really adulatory. He has this huge connection.
Yeah, a lot of great conductors of Wagner are Jews, actually.
And the great singers, Lotte Lehmann.
Jews, or the first conductor of Parsifal was a Jew. Yeah,
that's right. It's all confusing. This whole thing about Wagner is so confused because how he lived his life and how he claimed to live are always not the same.
Right.
So, and the same is true with Jewishness in music. We call it Judaism in music, but that's not a good translation. He wrote this thing. Right. But that's not how he lived.
And he rewrote it. But
and
it really
to make it worse.
Yeah, and it ended up not being any better.
Which one?
Yeah.
Judaism in music.
Okay.
Judentum an der Musik. It's the second edition is he's more excoriating.
Yeah.
But I think that Wagner did what he needed to do to succeed. And if the philosophy changes during the course of time, he changed during the course of time. He adapted for his obviously. Entering into a relationship with King Ludwig II, the 18-year-old kid who had a terrible crush on this father figure, to enter into that relationship to get out of it what? Silk underwear and fabulous home, wildly furnished, and all his debts paid.
Oh, wow.
Ludwig covered everything. He was a king. He covered everything. And he did what was convenient to get himself ahead. He was ambitious, and to take too seriously his philosophies. I mean, he was there were several philosophers he was really into. Hegel, for the most part, and then another guy, and then finally Schopenhauer. And he's always listed among the great thinkers of Europe. When you're studying philosophy, you will see Wagner listed among them.
Right.
The great thinkers influenced by, and you will read Richard Wagner's name there, which the British always call him Richard.
Richard Wagner, yeah.
Richard Wagner.
Richard Wagner.
No, that's Texans.
Oh, okay. All right.
So anyway, there's all this stuff going on. Preparation. These roles take a little thought and study, just vocally, I would imagine. I mean, I used to sing a little bit in college, and I knew how long it took me to put something together. If I were going to have to sing Erik, I know I would be vocalizing it for a long, long time. How did you approach Erik when you said, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to sing this damn thing"?
To be honest, I didn't approach it any different from any role. The German, luckily I speak a little bit of German, so the German was not terribly hard to memorize. There's a lot of it in, Erik is not the largest role in the world. It's basically a grand duet, and in the final scene there's a little dialogue and an aria. It's not dense in the same way that Lohengrin is. I mean, if you look at some of Lohengrin's monologues, they just go on and on and on and on. Tristan for half an hour. So it wasn't a huge mountain to climb to get the role in my body. He wrote it in a very bel canto way. Erik's music sounds to me very out of place at times. It's very folky. The melody, his aria at the end, sounds like it could have been in Der Freischütz. It's extremely folky, and I think he did that for a reason.
Sure he did.
The Dutchman's monologues, who Senta appeals to, they're grand, they're huge in orchestration, extremely heroic, and even though Erik is this hunter, it's written in a very folky way. To me, I say it's like Donizetti. It's like all of a sudden you hear a Donizetti melody or something.
Well,
it's
that little aria.
Yeah.
Really is very. It's like it is like a cavatina.
Yeah. So for me, I felt a little bit at home in this bel canto style. If it were a different Wagnerian role, I think it would have been much more preparation, much more study, and frankly, much more vocal preparation before the rehearsal started.
Vocalizing.
Yeah. But this was not, it's not easy by any stretch. Nothing he wrote was. But this is my first Wagner role, and it's the perfect introduction into the Fach, because it's just, it really straddles both sides. There is Wagner, the dream that he recites to Senta is extremely Wagnerian. But the whole role does not sit like that.
I think as time moves forward, we meet the Dutchman, and Die Frist ist has got to be one of the great musical compositions.
And probably maybe the best music in the opera.
Yeah.
Aren't the duets pretty awesome too? But yeah,
Die Frist ist
Die Frist ist
it stands out.
Yeah, actually, I'm working on it, learning it right now.
Good for you.
Yeah, because it's like
a good one.
Yeah. It's funny because Daland is really, really high, just like at the top, just slightly above your passaggio. There really aren't any notes, too many notes above high D. So when you sing through, like I warm up with Wotan's monologue when I'm doing this role, just because he starts with so many D naturals at the beginning of the opera. I sing better when I'm completely warmed up. Completely warmed up. So, like we had a run through yesterday, I sang through Wotan's monologue and then I sang Die Frist ist and then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go on. But Daland's an easier sing than most. I think if somebody was new to Wagner and they thought maybe they'd want to do that sort of thing, I would say sing as much Bach as possible. For Bach's pieces would be, I think, good for a person to just sing, and then use that same voice. You can sing it full with your full voice. Got to use your full voice, and then when you move into Wagner, somehow it's kind of you just think that same lilt, because I mean Wagner can be. It's like you got to train for it too. You got to have your muscles. It's like I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like yoga. You do yoga for 2 years. You can do standing head to knee, and it's not too difficult. You're not too sore the next day. But if you go, a month without doing it, you can injure yourself. And it's the same way with Wagner. Is you kind of have to train for it. Especially the bigger roles. I mean, Daland's a cakewalk, but the bigger roles, you really have to train for it the same way that people would train for a half marathon.
Right.
Or like a half marathon, an hour break, and another half marathon. It's a different ball game when you're on stage I'm talking Wagner in general.
I cannot imagine going on stage knowing I was going to be singing Parsifal or Tannhäuser.
Yeah.
I mean,
but he compensated for that. It's interesting.
Parsifal's only like 25 minutes of singing.
The actual role.
Tannhäuser is the actual role. Yeah, Tannhäuser is a lot of singing.
But it's a long evening. It's spread out. I mean, what he compensated for it by, Bayreuth was his project. It was his ideal of the way his opera should be consumed by everybody, by the singers, orchestra. And I was lucky enough to go a couple of years ago, and it was so interesting how long the intermissions are. Mm-hmm. It makes the entire evening or afternoon very long. However, it really is an experience. You sit down. The first act is, in my particular experience, it was Valkyr. And so the first act is roughly an hour, and then you have an hour and a half intermission. You go eat, you drink, you have coffee, you socialize, then you go back to the second act. That's another hour and a half, and then another intermission of an hour. So it's spread out throughout the day. But I can't help but to think that he didn't think of that as he was producing the rules of this festival. Maybe it was some for the singer. To rest and to sit and to have some downtime in between these giant acts where they are on stage a lot.
I don't know. I've thought about that too. I tend to not sing as well in a second rehearsal. When we have like 2 rehearsals in a day, 2 3-hour calls. I tend to not sing as well.
That's the irony. The irony. I didn't know if that was just me, because that's something I haven't really talked about with some singers.
Yeah.
I actually despise long intermissions because
it's like,
you kind of have
to warm my voice back up.
Right. It's not. I don't. But maybe his experience with singers is that they did like breaks. I just don't know.
I think he did it for his audience.
You think?
Yeah, I would guess so. Yeah.
I think he was doing it for the crowned heads of Europe.
As a place to be seen and to socialize
and to give them a time to be ready to go back in for another 90 minutes.
Because opera is work. I mean, going to opera.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm going to go see a Wagner opera, I make sure I get plenty of sleep that day. I eat the right foods. I don't drink too much water. I make sure I'm well hydrated that morning, and so that
Not this one. This is a short one, but the other ones. Let's not scare people away.
This one's a cakewalk compared to the other ones. Yeah. But I mean, if I was doing a role like Wotan, I would have to warm up really hard right before, because there's an F sharp right at the beginning, and then it's really low, which is so you calm back down, and then you have to warm up again for the end of Act 2, and then because there's another just really fast entrance where you have to come in. And then Act 3, you have to be pretty much really, really warmed up when you go on stage again. Right. You're on stage for the last 2 scenes. Yeah.
My first ring cycle was at Munich. I was 19. I had no clue what I was getting into. And that was at the Bavarian Staatsoper for a new production of The Ring.
Wow.
And Birgit Nilsson sang Alle Brunhildes.
Oh, wow.
And
wow.
Yes.
Wow.
James King with the Siegmund.
Oh, wow.
Helen Watts with the Sieglinde. And what's the most famous bass of the
Hans Hotter?
Hans Hotter.
Oh, wow.
Was all the Wotans.
Oh, wow.
That's
My
quite a
God.
cast.
And I had no
Wow.
idea what I was
And you
experiencing.
had no idea what you were going to...
I was much more interested in this model who had Stehplatz right behind me. And so every time I got up and gave her my seat, right, I ended up going out with her. And her
Okay, that's funny.
and her female friend, who was also a model. They took me around town. But for Goethe Dämmerung, the usher saw me stand up and offer her my seat and came over and demanded our tickets.
Oh, my God.
Oh,
And,
wow.
and she said, "You sit, you stand."
Really?
I wasn't allowed to give her my seat.
All right.
So, well, we were in Germany. What do you want? But I had really no clue what I was experiencing. I knew that I didn't care for Siegfried.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it. And it may have, the only thing I can remember about it at all is the Siegfried. I don't know who he was, but he was an enormous man. And they had him in a bear skin over one shoulder and those little flat sandals that lace up above your thigh
Okay.
and a curly golden wig
And no pants. No.
and no pants.
Oh, really? No pants? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And he was lying in the creation of Adam pose with the one knee up and the elbow resting
Yeah,
on the knee
yeah,
and his finger
yeah.
pointing, and the curtain went up on that. And he must have been between 250 and 300 pounds. He was a very large man
Uh-huh.
and as white as a sheet of paper.
Oh, my goodness.
And I'm from Florida.
Well, I mean, that's a makeup job issue right there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It was just an issue.
Yeah.
And I was just turned off by the whole experience. I didn't like it at all. I don't remember much. I really don't remember hardly anything of it. Later productions have erased it from my memory.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never forget the clothes because I thought they killed Birgit Nilsson. Because it had a series of columns with arches and lintels. And there was a slanted rake that was the funeral pyre. Mm-hmm. And she has a torch and she walks up on top of this slanted rake and throws down her torch and the magic fire circles the stage. And then the Rhine rises up, so all this blues encircling the stage, and the columns came down. And from where I sat, it looked for the world like one of those columns took her out.
Oh,
Oh,
really?
my God.
I was like, oh my God, they've killed Birgit Nilsson. I was like, oh no. And then she came out for her bow, so everything was fine. But I was not happy for that moment. But
Wow.
that was an introduction to the ring that I won't be able to duplicate.
Yeah, I mean, especially that cast.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
First time I saw The Ring was on TV, live from the Met back in the 80s, the 80.
Oh, that famous,
the
famous
the
one.
that-
Yeah. Is that Otto Schenk?
James,
Is that who directed? Otto
Morris.
Schenk, I think, is the director. I think.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think so.
I think
I threw him into the limelight. Yeah.
Yeah. That was actually great.
That was
as well.
amazing. Yeah.
I feel like that's the standard for our
Well,
generation.
For opening night, they had a Brunhilde. I mean, the Brunhilde had to cancel, so that I think they had their third cover going or something like that.
For the opening?
Or
Get in here! I
for
didn't
the
know
opening,
that.
Yeah, she wasn't the original.
Because it was Barron's on the. She was on all the recordings of that.
I think they got someone else for that, but the opening performance, she was. Well, she actually got horrible boos at the end of Goethe Dämmerung. Really sad, actually. I don't think anybody deserves that kind of response.
No, certainly
For
not.
jumping in when somebody
Yeah,
else is
certainly.
ill.
Right, someone else is ill and all that, and yeah.
Irene, our founding director, who was up there in her very first performance in her life. That's
Oh my gosh.
Eboli in Don Carlo at
Oh my God,
Oldenburg.
that looks like an Eboli.
Yeah, she was an Eboli. So at any rate, she was on stage when Adriana Couvreur, when Tibaldi made her come back after her mother died, and she took some years off. And then she came back, and Bing convinced her to come back as Adriana, because there's not a lot of high singing and
Right.
should work well. And there's a long entrance. She has this long entrance studying her part. She's an actress, right? And the audience was wild, screaming wild. And then Tibaldi started singing. And maybe it was too soon, maybe she wasn't quite ready, but the audience was disappointed. And by the end of the evening, there was no applause for her at all.
Oh wow.
Oh gosh.
And Irene turned on her audiences that night. She said, "This is no way to treat an icon of this business. This is
Right.
no way. This is disrespectful for what this woman has been.
Yeah.
If nothing else, that."
Right. Yeah.
And she never thought much of audiences after that.
Oh wow.
She,
I think it depends. Some cities that I worked at, I've left and I'm thinking, wow, I don't ever want to sing for this group of people ever again. They're just not the kind of audience I want to sing for. Yeah, sadly.
I agree. Yeah. It's usually wrapped up in culture. It depends on.
Well, I mean, it happens. I mean, at different parts of the country and all that. I feel like, I mean, even the reviewers, I feel like they're like the person who, it's like they review it as if they're reviewing a baseball game. Like singers are competing with each other and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking, actually.
And if you have a main reviewer in your town, and they're not good at what they do, that colors the experience for the whole town.
Yeah.
It changes the way audiences look forward to works, what they look for when they go to works.
Right.
It does change.
I feel like that's changing to some extent. Reviewers are.
Sure,
I mean, nowadays
it's all
people,
collapsed.
everything is Twitter. I mean, if people want to know something about an opera, they'll go to Twitter or Facebook. They won't go to like the New York Times and read a review. And so, I mean, everything's changing in that whole realm.
The whole of critical thought is changing. There was a time when there was such a thing as high culture. That's gone now.
Yeah.
And Mahler is no more important than Lady Gaga.
Sadly.
Someone who sings a 2.5 minute piece that has 30 seconds of lyrics, but they just sing them over and over for 2.5 minutes. They can make more money for the company that's distributing their work at 99 cents a pop for 5 million people than a Mahler symphony,
of course,
is going to make. So the whole thing is flipped around. And so critical thought, approaching something to understand, my God, this is what went into that. When you sit down and listen to even Mahler Fifth, doesn't matter what it is. You sit down and you look at that and you think of the brains that went into creating this thing.
Oh, I know, yeah.
And how deeply it affects you. The Shostakovich 11th Symphony. I was at the San Francisco Symphony was performing the Shostakovich 11th in Carnegie Hall, and I happened to be in New York.
Wow. Yeah.
So I bought a ticket and went inside.
Oh yeah.
And where did I get my ticket? I was first tier against the wall, right above the basses.
Oh wow.
There were 2 basses between me and the audience. I was looking at the face of Michael Tilson Thomas, granted from the side. But I was not looking at the back of Michael Tilson Thomas. Wow. I was over that orchestra.
Wow.
And at the end of the evening, another person in the box said to me, I thought we were going to have to call an ambulance for you. It was stunning.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You couldn't believe what you were hearing. It was just...
Well, I have to say, it is frustrating. However, in 100 years from now, there will still be Mahler, but there will not be Lady Gaga. That's the one thing to focus on. It's immediate reward for these pop artists. And I actually have to admit, I'm a big rock fan. But, the difference is that a lot of that trite music will disappear in a couple decades. And there will still be Mahler, there will still be opera, there will still be
and there might even music. Still be the American Songbook.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I conduct a military veterans chorus.
Oh, okay.
And we've been invited to sing on the Hornet, which is an aircraft carrier. And I said, we got to come up with some more music here, guys. We don't have the right stuff. So I said, how about we do a set from the American Songbook? So we're looking at April in Paris and Autumn in New York and Do I Love You and those, they can't take that away from me. Looking at some arrangements of those things. And I am so jazzed. I got up this morning, I'm singing these tunes of You Go to My Head and For All We Know. I'm singing them in the shower. I don't even really know them, but I was singing them anyway. That's real music.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It really is, yeah.
That's beautiful setting of wonderful lyrics. There's deep emotional content, and we're sort of arranging it like a song cycle. So
Absolutely.
Oh, neat.
It starts with April in Paris and ends with Autumn in New York.
Not just the standards, but all those old musicals from the beginning of the century on. I mean,
Kern.
that is serious music. Gershwin, Kern, all of that. That is serious music. Yeah. Serious music that will last. That will last. One must know how to play it. One must know how to conduct it. One really must know how to sing it. These are not simple pop songs. I mean, a lot of those old recordings all those singers were very clearly classically taught.
Oh yeah, no microphones.
Right. And they also sound like crossover.
Yeah.
I mean, they sound like opera singers singing musical theater.
Right.
They were
yeah.
serious singers.
I mean, there was a time before microphones. I mean, now if you go to Broadway, you can't see a Broadway musical without microphones.
Oh, the
Right.
instruments in the pit are mic'd.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
It's painful.
It sounds electronic. I mean, you could just have a synthesizer.
Well, even I mean, a lot of musicals are orchestrated with rock in mind, so it's a small band. But even when they do remounts of Carousel and scores where they're called for orchestras, it's not an orchestra. It's a couple strings, it's a couple horns, and the rest is balanced out by synthesizers.
Keyboards.
Right. So it has to be amplified.
So it all has to sound the
Right,
same.
right.
So there it is, this homogeneous
Right.
thing coming out of speaker.
Right.
I so want to do South Pacific at Opera San Jose. And okay, it is standard across the nation that opera companies do produce musicals.
Right.
It's how you introduce people to your company
Right.
who wouldn't normally walk in the door. And once they hear good singing and a good production
Right.
and see the acting that's possible, then perhaps they will come back in. It also is a box office assistant.
Right.
They really do help
Right.
keep the company going. And this is not new. This has been going on since the 80s at least.
Right.
So I'm thinking, okay, I'm now the general director and I should plan one of these things. So in my 3-year plan, I planned a couple of years out, the year that we're in actually, that we would bring a musical. And so I started looking at musicals. And everybody's telling me The Man of La Mancha, all these different things I should be looking at.
Sweeney Todd.
But yeah, that one. And the back of my head kept going South Pacific. I didn't know South Pacific. South Pacific. Light on the Piazza. There's so many.
Right.
But South Pacific. And so I went and found the video of that movie with Mitzi Gaynor.
Right.
Yeah.
So I watched that and I thought, this is awful and it's insulting. I couldn't possibly produce this in San Jose. This is impossible. And I wrote it off. But then I saw that Glenn Close had made a TV version.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, Glenn Close wants to do this? Now, what the hell is that?
Was Brand involved with that? Brent Turple?
I have no idea.
I don't think
I've
so.
never heard of
Okay.
this.
But anyway, I watched that. Well, by the time she was in her Jeep driving up to the top of that hill to tell those children that their father had died, I was a basket case.
Yeah.
I was ready to do that show somehow.
Yeah.
But then I thought, but my God, I don't have 400 sailors and I can't come in a helicopter to photograph the ship as it's being blown up. I mean, how could you possibly do it?
Right.
And then a little company over in Pleasanton was doing it in the firehouse. So I thought, well, hell, let's go over. And I said, hey, y'all want to go see South Pacific? So a whole bunch of us wanted to see South Pacific. We bought late. I heard about it late. So we were in the very first row. And at the intermission, nobody was exactly right, okay? Nobody was exactly right. The gal singing Floorbush was a little too stout, and the guy singing Lieutenant Gage was
Cable.
Lieutenant Cable.
Lieutenant Dan?
He was
sorry.
definitely not in good
music.
physical condition, and the guy singing Emile Dubek was certainly he was not a bass. And I turned around, walking up the aisle during intermission, and said, "Damn, this show is bulletproof." And some lady turned around and looked at me. She says, "Every time." So then Joe and I went to New York, and we went to the recording library there for Lincoln Center, and for the Broadway shows, and we watched it together.
The one that was just remounted a couple of years ago?
At the Beaumont Theater.
Okay.
Oh.
And I said, well, that's it. We can do this. And it's wonderful, and we must do it. Nellie Forbush is going to be hard to cast. But then I said, and we're not using microphones. Because guess what? I also saw the world premiere cast in Drury Lane. And there were no mics. Mary Martin didn't use a mic. Nobody used a mic. They stood up and sang it. And it was wonderful. You don't need to mic that. Use a live orchestra playing acoustic music, and your singers walk
Right.
out there, and opera singers
Right.
don't need mics.
No.
And in the California,
Usually it ruins the sound, actually.
Right.
doesn't it?
Oftentimes the speakers are lower quality, or they don't. People. Like Lady Gaga has sound men that make more money than opera singers. I mean,
Sure.
the sound men are. I mean, they're without the sound. I mean, the sound wouldn't exist without these guys. Yeah.
So I was bound and determined to do it, but then we ran into some problems with people saying if I dropped one of the operas and replaced it with a Broadway show, that they would not patronize our company and that would not donate to us. And
That's
stuff
just
like
such
that.
a shame. This music
So
is
I had to
classical.
walk
this
away
music.
from it.
Oh,
They would not
that's such a shame.
patronize, but okay. Well,
They would not
oh.
contribute or patronize the company.
Right. Right.
So
The Lyric in Chicago
Give it
has really championed a lot of these old musicals, and like you said, it is great for their company because every time they do a South Pacific or a Sound of Music, they're able to do some obscure
it
opera
pays
that is
for
never
the things
seen.
that you could. It pays
Right.
for your world premieres.
Right, exactly.
It pays for your contemporary stuff.
So it's really
And you
it's
have
a
to have a
shame.
way to pay for that. I mean, we do get, thank you to Carol Frank Buck for her generous donations to help us with Silent Night and with Moby Dick. It's coming up, right? But ticket sales, even
Right.
for famous, wonderful contemporary works, you won't sell very many single tickets. You'll have your subscriber base, and if you do this too much, you will hurt your subscriber base.
In the long run, yeah, you will. It'll change what the company is.
Yep,
Yeah,
you will
yeah.
hurt your subscriber base.
That happened with the Orlando Opera. Is that they did a few things to try to prove to the board that they can make money and all that, and it ended up being like the very standard stuff and musicals, and they sold well. They sold really well, but alas, a few years down the road, less people were giving money that wanted to see because they wanted to see operas, and
Right.
so even though there were more people in the audience, they were getting less donations.
So
from
the money
individuals,
wasn't
right.
coming in, and that counts too.
Right.
You want to see a lot of faces out there, but there is a line below which you can't go. When I first took over the company, we had double casts, and we were doing 8 performances for each cast, but we were selling at 50% capacity. So I knew I couldn't sustain that. 50%
Right.
doesn't pay the orchestra for that night.
Right.
So I had to fix that. So I dropped 2 shows and cut us back to 1 cast. And because there's no reason, 6 performances over 3 weekends.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
It's crazy to have a whole resident
course.
cast. So, but then we adopted the idea of covers for everybody, of course. So we didn't exactly back off of it. But it has changed everything because there's never a time that you go to the theater and it just like nobody came, right? And I dropped, of course, a Tuesday night, which was the lowest attendance, and I dropped the second Saturday and asked all those people, wouldn't you please move to the first Saturday? They said, no. I said, why not? It says, you don't give a talk on the first Saturday.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I will give a talk on the first Saturday if you'll move to the first Saturday, and 70-some% of them did.
Well, that's good. Yeah.
But that means I can never go to an opening night dinner because I'm going to give a talk. But that's okay with me. I'd rather be with a lot of people than a few people at dinner. Well, have you any thoughts that you'd like to share? How do you like being in San Jose? I apologize for this horrible weather.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Blue skies every day.
Yeah.
Boring.
I dressed to go hiking in Alum Park actually after this.
Oh, Alum Rock Park. That's cool.
Yeah.
I do go there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love running along the stream or walking along the edges, and yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay. Now I'm going to clue you into my secret.
And this is going to be a podcast, so it won't be a secret anymore.
Well, it's okay. Nobody's
All
going to
right.
listen to this.
Oh, okay. Hi, Mom.
On the way back, after you've been hiking around and you're hot and sweaty,
Oh, yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
On your way back, just where are you staying? Are you at 15th Street?
I'm at the 15th, yeah.
All right. On 24th Street and Santa Clara,
Okay.
there is a little restaurant,
Uh-huh.
Plaza de Garibaldi,
Oh, okay.
and order one only, Super Chavella.
Super Chavella. Okay.
Get one,
Uh-huh.
no more,
No more.
Super Chavella and some food.
Uh-huh.
They're not cheap, this place,
Uh-huh.
but it's not horrible. You know, it's a little Mexican restaurant.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And
24th in Santa Clara. Okay. Cool.
I was a guy who never had a beer, didn't care at all. Don't particularly like wine much.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I quit.
I'm actually
drinking
brewing
wine.
beer right now. Our final room run, I bought a kit. I was at the the budget grocery store that's right near the apartments that we're at, and I saw it was on sale, and I was like, I've always wanted to try the yeast and the thing, so I made it while we were having our final rehearsal. Yeah.
So you're gonna have beer.
So yeah, it will be ready at closing night, and it'll be really
wait.
bad, and everybody will take a sip.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, the Super Chavella changed my world.
Wow.
Because it's beer.
Yeah.
You get to choose the kind of beer you want. Modelo Especial.
And
something like that.
what is it? It's beer with
It's
something
beer
else?
with tequila and lime juice
Yum.
and salt around the rim.
We're going. Yeah.
And salt around the rim.
Yeah.
One.
Just one.
Because when I had my first one, I wasn't at that place. I was at a place that they were a little smaller.
Yeah.
They come in a frozen bird bath. This one just came, it was just basically a beer.
A beer. Okay.
So I had my two of my godchildren with me and Rhea's fiance at the time.
Uh-huh.
And it was a hot July day, and we go to Mezcal downtown behind the cathedral. And they had a little outdoor place. And we climbed up on these high stools of the table, and I saw this thing with beer, and I thought, that sounds refreshing. I'll get one of those. So I get this thing. Well, it went right down.
Oh, yeah.
It went right down.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking along. The gal comes by, and she says, can I get you one? They says, yeah, give me another one. So we're talking.
no.
Well, about halfway through the second one, there I am. Dan, you know I love you, Dan. Rhea, honey, you know I love you. Adam, you're getting such a good girl. She is such a good girl.
funny.
She's so smart. You kids, I love you kids. And they thought, they're Uncle Larry, who doesn't drink, who
that's
doesn't do
funny.
anything.
Right.
And there I was, toasted.
That's funny.
That's great.
So, one.
Solamente.
All right.
Oh, wow.
Well, guys, thanks for coming in. It's been fun.
Thank
I don't
you.
think we had
Yeah.
any great insights into Wagner's life, but hey,
Get to know us a little bit.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's the audiences. If people are listening, they're actually more interested in you than Wagner.
Well, the funny thing, a lot of opera singers are kind of shy. You've seen us on stage, and we're like, obnoxious, but we have everything memorized, and we know exactly what we're going to do. But, oftentimes with interviews, it's a little nerve-wracking because it's like, I realize I'm a little bit I'm not as talkative, and jovial. I suppose after I've had one of these, what's the name of the drink again?
That's the key to drink
Chavella.
before.
Super Chavella. If I have a Super Chavella, I might be a little bit more, flamboyant.
Well, I thought it was grand.
All right.
It was Irene who pointed out to me, because Irene hated to speak in public.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Irene, you sing Lady Macbeth and Kundry.
Yeah.
How could talking to the Rotary Club give you an issue?
Right,
I mean,
right.
you've done a command performance for Elizabeth II. So, local Rotary should be piece of cake.
One would think, yeah.
And she says, Larry, when I walked out on stage, a genius wrote the words for me.
Yeah, exactly.
And somebody else
That's a
decided
good way to put it. Yeah.
which word was important, which syllable needed to be brought out. It's done.
It's done.
And so, as long as I was memorized, I was fine, and I was always memorized. So anyway, guys, thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
coming
it
in.
was
It's
fun.
been grand.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care.